Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dark Whispers. In this video, we'll cover two strange disappearances where the victims were found, yet the discovery only makes these cases incredibly disturbing. There is nothing quite like realizing the true, horrific ordeal someone endured after they vanished. As always, viewer discretion is strongly advised. Intro music, low industrial hum mixed with distant, distorted screaming. A young man named Delvonte disappeared on Sunday, November 14th, 2010. The next night, at 9:30 p.m., 850 miles away in Milton, Massachusetts, college students drove down a foggy street. Their headlights illuminated an object that was not a deer, but a shattered, broken human body, wearing only tattered jeans. The limbs were angled impossibly. The scene felt like a violent, grotesque. The body was in such horrific shape that determining an identity or a cause of death was instantly impossible. Police immediately suspected a savage hit-and-run, but the medical examiner's findings whispered a far more terrifying story. Inside a torn jean pocket, they found a shattered plastic card, a handful of sharp, unidentifiable fragments, and a school pass. The autopsy showed no knife or gunshot wounds, but the body was a ruin of shattered bones and catastrophic internal injuries. These wounds defied local physics, being consistent with a fall from an unimaginable, dizzying height. Investigators were baffled and unnerved. There was nothing tall enough on that. In a chilling twist, Delvonte had been struck by at least two more vehicles before the students stopped. But the true horror was that he was demonstrably dead when those subsequent impacts occurred. He was a silent, ruined thing, already settled on the asphalt. The case had frozen into a dead end until a desperate investigator suggested a theory so wild it sounded like a ghost story. He may have fallen out of an airplane bound for Logan International Airport. Pressurized cabins don't simply lose passengers, but the brutal logic of the injuries, consistent with a fall from a significant height, was relentless. They had to consider the possibility of a wheel well stowaway, a grim occurrence documented by the FAA. Then, supporting details began to crawl out of the darkness. Residents near the discovery site reported an alarmingly loud, heavy bang that night, like something impossibly dense had hit the ground. Even more chilling was the shattered card. Once pieced together, it was a digital room key from a hotel near the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina. This tied him directly to the point of disappearance. Investigators focused on U.S. Airways Flight 1176. When they inspected the Boeing 737, the impossible became horrifically real. Delvonte's fingerprints, ghostly traces of his final moments, were found on the landing gear and the wheel well door. The 100-minute flight was a guaranteed death sentence. The wheel well is unpressurized and unheated. At cruising altitude, the air is too thin, and the temperature plummets to a staggering -50 degrees Fahrenheit. His death was likely by being crushed when the gear retracted. or by a silent, bone-freezing hypothermia, where his internal organs shut down one by one. Of those who survive the ascent, most plummet to their deaths when the landing gear lowers for the final approach. We will never know if he fell alive or dead that night. But either way, if the frigid air and the unforgiving machinery didn't kill him, the catastrophic impact certainly did. On a cold Monday morning in Vienna, 10-year-old Natascha walked alone. A small victory. She was consumed by loneliness, fostering a twisted fantasy, simply stepping into the path of a moving vehicle. On March 2nd, 1998, as she passed a quiet road, she saw a man beside a white delivery van. He looked harmless, yet a visceral, paralyzing alarm screamed in Natascha. As she walked, closing the gap, the inevitable struck like a predator's trap. A hand clamped down. She screamed and fought, but he was too strong, pulling her into the van before any witness could register the horror. Pinned in the darkness, she began asking questions, but desperate, terrifying attempt to humanize herself. He remained a silent terror, the air in the van thick with the metallic smell of stale sweat. Driving fast towards an unknown, suffocating destination. The van drove 12 miles to a quiet, respectable suburb. The man, Wolfgang, parked in his unassuming garage. When the door slammed shut, he carried her out like a discarded sack of meat. The floor concealed a trap door, revealing a dark, steep stairwell. At the bottom, behind a cupboard, was a hand-carved, narrow passage leading to the true horror, a 54-square-foot cell. This was a solid concrete prison with no windows, no ventilation, and no connection to the world save for the tunnel. It was completely soundproof. Natascha could have screamed until her lungs gave out. No one would ever hear. This was her new, suffocating reality. Inside, Wolfgang demanded her school bag, his eyes twitching with a terrifying paranoia about a hidden transmitter. Yet, in a bizarre, chilling act of compliance, Natascha requested that first night to be tucked in, read a story, and given a goodnight kiss. Wolfgang, enacting a grotesque facsimile of fatherhood, obliged. For the first 6 months, Natascha was a prisoner in the concrete cell. Wolfgang played a warped father figure, bringing strange gifts and claiming to be an Egyptian god, a clear sign his sanity was unraveling. Her only defense was regression, pretending this terrifying madness was a twisted kind of normal. But compliance couldn't last. As the years bled away, she began to resist, and her resistance made Wolfgang truly furious. His core need was absolute control, and he moved to crush her spirit. The beatings became routine, calculated, punishing attacks that left her bruised and broken. He started depriving her of food, deliberately starving her until her bones were visible, and she was too weak to even dream of escape. In a final act of torment, he installed an intercom, lying in bed at night with it on, yelling insult. In the midst of the torment, Wolfgang would abruptly flip, crying and talking about their future as his perfect Aryan companion. Natascha resisted the fantasy. Once, she punched herself in the face repeatedly during a beating, the desperate act stopping him. She was given censored media, a cruel contrast to the massive missing persons investigation she wasn't meant to hear about. The police had even searched Wolfgang's van, dismissing him. The unbearable proximity to freedom was the cruelest joke. Then, after 8 years, her moment arrived. Now 18, she was vacuuming the van. Wolfgang stepped away for a phone call, momentarily dropping his guard. The loud vacuum masked her movements. Natascha didn't hesitate. She left the vacuum running and sprinted. Over fences, through hedges, pushing past bystanders who couldn't register the terror they were seeing. She reached a neighbor's house, repeating her full name until the woman understood. Wolfgang knew it was over. He confessed to a friend, then lay his head on the cold train tracks and waited for the terrifying rumble of annihilation to grow prominent. News of Natascha's escape horrified the world, which was stunned by her poise. She confirmed she had been assaulted countless times. Yet, when she learned of Wolfgang's suicide, she burst into tears. She had spent 3,096 days with him, a tormentor, but also her sole human presence. She developed a terrifyingly complex bond and vehemently rejected the expert rush to label her a victim of Stockholm Syndrome. To Natascha, this phrase reduced her 9 years of hell to a single, inadequate cliché, disrespecting her right to define the pain. The most chilling post-captivity act is her claim of ownership over the house where she was held, taking it from Wolfgang's estate as the ultimate reclamation of power. She cleaned the house, visited it, and most symbolically, had the cellar where she was caged filled in with solid concrete. As of 2017, she remains the owner, a terrifying monument to survival. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. If you have a story suggestion, feel free to submit it to the form found in the description. Also, if you want to support the channel, consider joining the Patreon or becoming a channel member here on YouTube. Anyways, thanks again, and hopefully I will see you in the next one.